1 minute? It's just an announcement. Hope they're not live yet. As we're working to get our technical things out, I'm here to say good morning. Good morning. And Susie has graciously let me sort of slip in an announcement before she leads us in worship. This is the parking questionnaire, as well as picking up the 3 pieces of paper you need for the annual meeting. If you don't get it online, we're also asking you to pick up a parking questionnaire. No surprise, parking has been a long-term challenge here, and council is trying to continue to look at all the possibilities to make it at least a little bit smoother for people. We know there's no perfect fix, but if we know who and how many need what kind of support, that's the first step. We're hoping to get Kendra, who's just done an amazing job of getting all of the paperwork for the annual meeting pulled together, by the way, so just huge kudos to Kendra. But we're hoping next week she's going to be able to email out the questionnaire to people that like to do things online and save a little bit of paper. If that doesn't feel comfortable for you, please pick one up at the back and bring it back in the next week or 2. Will be much appreciated. Okay, and that was all I had to say, so thank you very much. And now we'll let us move into worship.
Good morning and welcome to our Sunday morning worship. We'll begin with our gathering song from Voices United 374 and on the Christ be with you. Let us open our hearts in prayer and centering our hearts as one. Creator God, within us and in all of creation, gather us in, the brokenhearted and the joyful. Gather us in our weakness and in our strength. Gather us in, the fearful and the brave. Gather us in, the young and the old. Gather us in to sing of God's love. Gather us in to honor the Spirit of Jesus Christ's love, justice, and courage. Gather us in to respect and wonder. Gather us in to connect more deeply and a new way to God's love. Our next song, Come Touch Our Hearts. Many voices, or more voices, 12.
From failing embers, build a
I would like to invite the children up to the chancel steps. So the next is a song from More Voices, number 8, and On This Path. And now we'll ask Madeline to come up for the Green Minute.
Good morning. Before I start, I just want to mention that yesterday we had a fabulous Composting 101 workshop here at Knox Church. And it was sponsored by the Green Team as well as Sustainable Brandon and the Climate Action Team. And it was recorded. So if you go to the Knox Church YouTube channel, you can access that and maybe learn a little more. It does have a little bit to do with what we're talking about today. So we've been talking since October about the different ways that we have control over our greenhouse gas emissions. The goal is to get to 50% by 2030. We talked about transportation, our thermostats and electric heating, retrofits, water heating, laundry, drying clothes. So today, the last big source of greenhouse gas emissions that we have control over in our households is food waste. Canadians waste, are you ready? 58% of the food we produce. That adds up to a value of approximately $49 billion annually. And 47% of that food that's wasted is wasted after we leave the store. So it's sort of like if you go to the grocery store and buy 4 bags of groceries, you may as well drop 2 of them in the garbage can on your way out the door. So what is it that we're throwing out? I know the graph is kind of hard to read, so I'm going to help you out here. 30% of what we throw out are vegetables. 15% that we throw out is fruit. 13% is leftovers. Bread and bakery, 9%. Dairy and eggs, 7%. Meat, fish, poultry, 6%. And this is the one I have the hardest time believing. I have never in my life thrown out a dessert, but 17% is desserts and snacks. So what is it that we're actually throwing, how much, what is it we're throwing out? 1.2 million tomatoes, 1.225 million apples, 2.4 million potatoes, 650,000 loaves of bread, 640,000 bananas, 1 million cups of milk, 470,000 eggs, 139,000 heads of lettuce. Now I know that's a lot. So how do we stop this? I know you've heard me talk about the 3 R's of recycling. Well, we have 3 R's of food waste, and they are reduce, recover, recycle. Reduce is the one that's probably the easiest, because that's where we only buy what we know we will actually use. So we need to plan our meals, we need to buy only what we use, we need to check our refrigerators regularly for leftovers, and then we need to eat them. 13%, remember? Just 13% of what we throw out is leftovers. Know your food labels. A best before date is different than an expiry date. Lots of best before foods can be eaten safely after that date. But if you make sure that you properly store the food that you have, then that keeps it fresh longer. Number 2, recover. Donate food that you're, you go to the co-op and they have this great sale, so you buy 20 cans of soup because it's a really good deal. Well, again, there is a best before date, and you don't want to give that away to somebody else once it's past that date. It's just not cool. So, but if you know, oh gee, you still have 15 of those cans of soup left and they're going to expire in a month, you'll say, well, I might be able to get through 4 of those. Send the rest to Samaritan House, Helping Hands, Salvation Army, Bear Clan, or any other organization that will get the food out to those who need it in our community. The Food Rescue Grocery Store, organized by the Brandon Food Council and the John Howard Society here in Brandon, does an amazing job of recovering food every week. Support that effort. That food is there for anyone to purchase. The idea is to rescue it. So it doesn't help if it stays in their food grocery store waiting till it's past its best before. The third is recycle, which means composting. Ask for a green bin from the city or start your own composting project in your backyard. I know that many of you live in multi-unit housing and a green bin is not an option. Talk to the managers of your building, request a composting bin, try vermicomposting. That's composting with worms. There are electric home composters on the market that speed up the composting process. I don't know a lot about them, but investigate. It may be just what you need. Share a bin with a friend who already has a green bin. Food that is produced but not eaten ends up in our landfills, creates methane, a greenhouse gas that is 25 times more potent than CO2 in the short term and in the long term, and 100 times more potent in the long term. Or I'm in the short term. I'm so bad with numbers. 25% in the long term and 100 in the short term. Food waste is something we can all do to fix. When food is wasted, all the energy and resources used to produce it are also wasted. So reducing your food waste saves you money and is one of the ways that you can start today to do your part in reducing your greenhouse gas emissions in your home to help us all get to our goal of 50 by 30. Thank you.
A reading from 1 Corinthians 2, 6, 7, and 9 to 11. We do, however, speak a message of wisdom among the mature, but not the wisdom of this age or the rulers of this age. No, we declare God's wisdom, a mystery that has been hidden and that God destined for our glory before time began. However, as it is written, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, the things prepared for those who love God, these are the things that God has revealed by his Spirit. The Spirit searches all things, even the deep things of God. For who knows a person's thoughts except their own spirit within them? In the same way, no one knows the thoughts of God except the Spirit of God. What we have received is not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit who is from God, so that we may understand what God has freely given us. I will just take a few minutes to share some words in Cree with you before my reflection. Gisemandu gananaskamitan anoska gisagach. Sawenimanan gamino bematsiak. Wichihinan ganawenimanan anus wabache egwamadas dugisagao. Wichihinan ganawenimanan gakino nininan gachawasamisa. Na bewak swewak. Na besak egoswesasak. Minanan inunosawin ego minoma chihoin. Egosane gakino nawakamaganak. So I just want to acknowledge the ancestral territory of the indigenous peoples that were here on these lands and across this country, across these lands. We want to acknowledge the story of the people and the story of the land, the indigenous worldview that was happening here prior to European contact. We want to look to the east, to the south, the west, and the north, and we want to give thanks for the indigenous nations, for their stories, their songs, their prayers, their dances, their gatherings, their ceremonies, their prayers. We turn back to the east, we come full circle, and we acknowledge all the nations, all the people who now call this land their home, those who came as visitors, guests, newcomers, immigrants, some generations ago. And we want to acknowledge this time that we are all here together and our stories that connect us, each one of us and all of us, to the story that was happening here prior to contact. We want to remember that story that is important to how we live and work and be together in this day and in the days to come. So I give thanks and I say Egwasane. I was here last month for the service on January 1st, and I talked about how Christmas becomes an invitation for us to join with God in the transformation of this world, making the hope and dream of Creator God a present reality for this time and this place. We were reminded that Christmas then is about transformation, and it is about our participation with God in Minopamatsiwan, the good life, and making the world anew, or evolving to a new way of knowing and being. We talked about the question asked by Meister Eckhart, What good is it if Mary gave birth to Christ centuries ago, and I don't give birth to Christ in my person and my culture and my times? I continue to find myself wondering and also continuing to process what it actually means for Christ to be born in me or in you. Myself as a Cree woman who sees life and lives life from an Indigenous worldview perspective, and many of you here whose lives have been informed by and who live from a Western worldview perspective. What does Christ being born in us look like for me and for you in this time and place? What does it mean that Christ should be born in us? Exactly what might it look like for Christ to be born in a person? I know that it is something more. So we looked to the writings of Meister Eckhart to consider what it might mean for Christ's birth to happen in us, in our contexts, you and I, at this time. I think of this also in terms of the resurrection also, and ask how the Spirit of Jesus Christ's love is resurrected in our lives. As I sit in circle on many occasions, I often begin by saying how important it is to acknowledge where we are right now and to ask if this is where we want to be in terms of reconciliation, which we know is a win-win situation where we all win at nobody else's expense. And then once where we are and where we want to be is understood, I ask, what is the hope and the vision for the future in that regard? And what do we need to do differently to get there? To live toward the vision that we have. We all know that if we keep doing what we are doing, we will keep on getting what we're getting. Last time I was here, I said I would share more of my participation with Creator God in being the change that I think is hope for me. So I want to tell you a little bit about my journey at the Blue Door Song and Story as Medicine Circle, the men's wellness gathering that's been happening here in Brandon, pulling together, living into wellness at any given opportunity, like Sam's Powwow at 339 on 12th Street on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m., and weekends like Sioux Valley's Dakota Nation's annual Winterfest, where Steve and I went and hung out all last Saturday and all last Sunday. On Saturday, I watched a volleyball game that started at 10 p.m. My friend's daughter was playing. It was just a really good way to go and say hello to old friends and meet new ones, and to watch hockey, volleyball, powwow, square dancing, jigging, and all those different kinds of events that are held there. In December, a friend hosted a sharing circle at the Blue Door. The Blue Door is a warming shelter downtown on 9th Street. Sam Jackson and I brought our drums and we sang songs and shared the stories of our lives with those who came to sit in the circle. Several told their stories too, and we listened and we heard each other. Sari kept inviting people as they came and went into the circle, came and went from the place, kept inviting them to the circle throughout our time there. And some came and some didn't. But when it came time to smudge at the end, the majority of them came to smudge. I sensed an appreciation there, and I know when I was challenged by life circumstances, I needed people in my life just to be and sit and listen. On Monday evenings at Brandon University, we have a song and story as medicine circle, where Sam also comes and brings whoever will come with him, and we sing songs and share stories there too. There's a student, a Brandon University student, living here in her final year, who is from the PAW, and her partner come on a regular basis. And the stories that are shared are not stories that you would hear every day, but there's also a lot of joy that's shared there as well. In late last fall, I agreed to be a part of the men's wellness gathering. The men's wellness gathering came out of Movember, where there was fundraising for men's wellness, and they had money left over, so they supported Indigenous men's wellness groups. There are now groups, Winnipeg, Roseau, Long Plain, Birdtail, Chinupawakpa, and Brandon, and there probably are others. Those are the ones that I know of. In November, on a Saturday morning, in November, on a Wednesday evening, I went to a ribbon shirt making. And there were about 15 men there. And they all gathered in a circle to introduce themselves and to welcome a couple of the visitors that were there. I was one of them. And the first person who shared said, "If it were not for this group, I would be dead." And each person shared their names and briefly how long they've been there and how it's been helpful to them. But it was just a beautiful evening to see many different, the men at many different stages of cutting their material, sewing, ironing, trying to sort out ribbons and colors and all of that. And part of what I do as a community evaluator is to sit and listen to the stories of these men. And so I've participated in a few different things. They went on a hunt and I met them for their feast one Saturday afternoon and visited with them for a few hours then. And they do all kinds of things. I don't attend all of their things, but one of the things they have been doing is supporting each other. So Brandon group will go to Chinupawakpa or Birdtail, and they have lots of wonderful things planned. And it's not just Indigenous men. There are non-Indigenous men there as well. There was one man named Phil who had his two small boys at the sharing circle that they held a couple of weeks ago. And I wish I could show you some of the pictures I took. Maybe one day I will. I continue to be involved in a learning circle at Brandon University called Pulling Together. Different groups will sign up, and about a dozen or so will gather for about 6 weeks to read and review and reflect on the Pulling Together resource, which is a Manitoba version of the history of Indigenous people from an Indigenous person's community perspective. Blanket exercises continue to happen regularly at BU, ACC, and in the community. I tell people that I have now sat in hundreds of blanket exercise circles, and I never tire of the exercise and the story of the relationship with Canada and Indigenous people and its impact on those who attend and the stories they share. I always tell them that I am blessed and honored to sit with them and listen. I encourage those of you who have not experienced a blanket exercise to inquire about when the next one will be held. And for those who have been to one, I encourage you to attend again and again. I have to add that each time I participate in the blanket exercise, I grow more and more deeply in my own story, my truth, and walking forward to the vision of healing for myself and the community. I recently sat in a blanket exercise with 42 second-year nursing students. Debbie and I have been talking about having a blanket exercise at some point in the near future, and my hope is that the conversations in circle would continue from there. I also have all kinds of opportunities as a knowledge keeper in the community, and next week at the 29 on 6th Street, the 60 Scoop gathering place, I will be telling stories there about my experience in growing up in Churchill. The Teachings House. Last Monday, January 30th, in the gathering space at the Brandon University Library, the topic was storytelling through art. Barb Blind, a Anishinaabe elder and knowledge keeper, told a story of a group of women and Albin who had been beading together at BU on Tuesdays for several years now. They called themselves the Beading Babes. Barb shared the story of several pieces of beadwork that fit into the shape of a turtle, representing the Turtle Island. As I sat beside her and listened to how they participated in a beading symposium a few years ago, and how each told a story of their beadwork piece that made up a part of the whole. I saw flowers, feathers, a star quilt, creation in many colors. I thought of how each person decided on something that would represent their individual story, and how each of their stories was important to the bigger picture. I quoted Richard Rohr's definition of reconciliation, and I do so always because it says that reconciliation is a win-win situation where we all win at no one's expense, and that we all matter and we all participate. The other person who shared at that last gathering of Teachings House was Kevin, who presented on the piece he created at the request of Brandon University titled Healing Together. This piece stands 24 feet tall at the corner of 19th and Louise Avenue. He talked about what inspired him and how his art speaks to and acknowledges the need for continued reconciliation from where each person is at and where they need to begin the process for themselves and envision healing both as an individual and collectively. There were education students, probably about 40, who attended, many soon to be teachers who are committed to being a part of the changes that need to happen in the education system. In the last year of Teachings House gatherings at Brandon University, we have had many teachings and sharings on a variety of different topics. We do the equinox and solstice teachings there. We've covered grief and loss, Métis story and community, and dance as a gift for graduation, and lots of storytelling. The gathering has become a place of connection to each of our stories and to each other, and how being together in relationship and community will help us to have a common experience and a common understanding. All are welcome to participate. We are now getting together in person, but there is also an opportunity to join on Zoom for those who are unable to attend in person. We gather in the ceremony room at times also, but the gathering space at Brandon University and the library is a really beautiful place to be. I have a couple more, but I'll leave those. A non-Indigenous friend asked a question recently. Is there a program or mentor that non-Indigenous people can learn from about Indigenous ways? And I said that we can learn from institutions, organizations, books, conferences, workshops, speakers, etc. But I think the most important way to learn is from and about Indigenous people, is to be in relationship and community with them. Learn about Indigenous ways of knowing and being from them. You see, participation with Indigenous people is living into reconciliation, understanding our own part of each of our stories in connection to the story of Indigenous people here, and knowing the story of the land and the stories of the people who were and are, and know the story of what happened, how it went from Indigenous worldview happening there to predominantly worldview society we live in now. For those of us in the Brandon and area, know the story of Clear Lake and the provincial and national parks across this province and across the country, and places like Métis community known as St. Madeleine. Indigenous people still carry those stories and are in the process of reconciling what happened. We do not want to dwell on the sadness of what happened, but truth and lament must come before reconciliation. And it is important to remember that healing and recovery for both non-Indigenous and Indigenous people is a process, a lifelong one for many. Author Lee Miracle said in her book, My Conversations with Canadians, said, "One of the most complicated conversations I have had with Canadians is about colonialism itself." In her book, Memory Serves, she discussed colonialism in terms of viruses colonizing the body, and said perhaps we are still that primal, or at least some people are, without a strong cultural foundation. I am often asked about colonization and decolonization, and I get the feeling at times, this is what she said, that everyone thinks it's a mental exercise. A colony is a space, a physical space that once belonged to someone or something else, like tuberculosis colonizing the lung. It once belonged to the breather, but now is occupied by the tubercular bacteria, and the host will die of it if a war is not waged against the tuberculosis. It is not an idea that the hosts need to rid themselves of the bacteria. An idea will not help save the patient. Likewise, with decolonizing in general, Miracle goes on to say, teachers fall on your path, and all you have to do is look for them. One such person for her was Susan Blight, who unraveled some long-standing colonial confusion when she said, "It is not about our knowledge fitting into yours. Decolonization is how you fit into us and how we fit in together." Miss Blight had provided a way of understanding. The Colin Kaepernick story on Netflix helped me to understand that many are in denial about racism, and I add, colonialism. Colin was adopted and raised by white parents, and his parents did not see the racism and prejudice that he experienced throughout his life because they did not experience it themselves. And so it was dismissed and denied. Probably, possibly, without awareness or intention. I listened to BU Chancellor Mary Jane McCullum recently, speaking to BU staff and community about how societal rules and way of doing things 100 years ago must not continue today if we want change. I say again and again that my life in circles for 41 years now, and all of my involvement and commitment to relationship and community has contributed to my own personal transformation and continues to do so. We are all here in the circle of life as part of creation. May we come together often and regularly to build a life in relationship and community. I will end with a poem by Joy Harjo, Muskogee Creek, poet and author. The poem is called Remember. Remember the sky that you were born under. Know each of the stars' stories. Remember the moon. Know who she is. Remember the sun's birth at dawn. That is the strongest point of time. Remember sundown and the giving away to night. Remember your birth, how your mother struggled to give you form and breath. You are evidence of her life and her mother's and hers. Remember your father. He is your life also. Remember the earth whose skin you are. Red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth. We are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life who have all their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them, listen to them. They are alive poems. Remember the wind, remember her voice. She knows the origin of the universe. Remember, you are all people, and all people are you. Remember, you are this universe, and this universe is you. Remember, all is in motion, is growing, is you. Remember, language comes from this. Remember, the dance language is that life is. Remember. I'm going to sing a song. I got to grab my drum. This is a song called Neowin, and I kind of like to sing it. It was a song that was introduced to the church some years ago, and it is a song that says thank you in the Mohawk language. It is a song that I sang with the kids when we were singing here together. And it is a song that introduces the drum as an instrument of prayer. And so, way back then. And so I'll sing it for you today. Way-o hi-ya, Yahweh hi-yo hi-ya. Way-o hi-ya, Yahweh hi-yo hi. Way-o hi-ya, Yahweh hi-yo hi-ya. Way-o hi-ya, Yahweh hi-yo hi. Way-o hi-ya, Yahweh hi-yo hi-ya. Way-o hi-ya, Yahweh hi-yo hi. Way-o hi-ya, Yahweh hi-yo hi-ya. Way-o hi-ya, We'll now move on to prayers for the people. And I invite you, either silently or aloud, to acknowledge those you remember, especially today. Creator God, like the story of the Israelites in the wilderness, we too have sought love and experienced a connection to a sense of care and provision. And we are invited to extend that love to the world around us, to care for others as deeply as we care for ourselves. And so we bring the needs of our world before you now. In a spirit of love and mercy, we know our prayers are heard. We pray for the many who do not have enough love and friendship, enough food to eat or shelter to keep warm, enough employment or money to pay their bills, enough medicine or medical care. We also pray for those who have more than enough, but who still struggle to find meaning and purpose in life, who indulge in dangerous or self-serving ways to dull pain or loneliness. Holy and sacred, your honor reaches out to all of us. You call us to live as people on earth, working together with one heart and mind. Strengthen us to live in a manner worthy of the love we have known and received, offering our lives in service of your kingdom, where the last are first and the first are last, and there is enough grace for all. Eternal Spirit, earth maker, pain bearer, life giver, source of all that is and that shall be, Father and Mother of us all, loving God in whom is heaven. The hallowing of your name echo through the universe. The way of your justice be followed by the people of the world. Your heavenly will be done by all created beings. Your commonwealth of peace and freedom sustain our hope and come on earth. With the bread we need for today, feed us. In the hurts we absorb from one another, forgive us. In times of temptation and test, strengthen us. From trials too great to endure, spare us. From the grip of all that is evil, free us. For you reign in the glory of the power that is love, now and forever. Amen. Our closing prayer. Gisemandu, Gishjimandu, Creator God, instill in us again and again a deep sense of your justice. May we never take for granted the food that we have, nor tell ourselves that hunger is not our problem. Help us to use the voices that we have to speak up against the many injustices that make hunger, both physical and spiritual hunger, an ever-present problem. Amen. I thought we had a song for the journey. We do, sorry. I went ahead for the closing prayer. So we'll now do the song for the journey. Voices United 395, Part of the Family.
We are lost and we are found.
In a world that is always asking us to become something, someone, some success story, in this place we say, don't become. Be who we already are. Don't become light. Be the light you already are. This is what God anciently placed in you. Don't become salt. Be the salt you already are. It is in this way you are known to God. For from these elements, salt and light, each and every one of us is uniquely created. Don't become anything. Be who you are and discover and/or rediscover the sacred within, and remember that God loves you in your being. Amen.